This album has several cuts on it that speak about current events. The first one that we kind of highlighted in a video we did is called Trouble with the Water, and that is about a situation in Flint, Michigan. We're actually from near there. I'm from a small town in near Flint, Michigan. Spent a lot of time there as a youth, and I'm horrified by what has happened there with the water and how the politicians kind of glossed over this issue, and a lot of people's lives are in danger because of it. So that song is pretty poignant about that. Another song called Everybody Wants to Be Loved. I think that one of the big problems in our world is that people don't have the love they need. They don't get support and compassion from people that are close to them. Many people are looking at their cell phones and not paying attention to what's going on around them or the people in their lives, and next thing you know, someone's out shooting, a whole bunch of people in Las Vegas or, here in Rogers Park. And I think that I honestly believe a lot of the people that do these things are lacking love in their lives. So there's a song called Everybody Wants to Be Loved.
No, there ain't no doubt about it. All we need is love. All we need is love. I said.
And that speaks to that. Additionally, Calling All Saints, the title track from this album, is about calling up the inner saint within us all that I do believe is there, and reaching out to each other and finding the solutions that will heal the Chi-Town soul. There's a lot of reference to Chicago in that song, calling out to the mayor, the politicians, the preachers, the people with the goodliness within us all that is going to take to keep this from continuing. It's just a travesty what's happened here and continues to happen. And I'm a singer. I can only sing about it, but I hope that I can share the music in a way that it ignites some kind of action within all of us. We're all so disconnected with our devices, don't you think? It's like one of your pet peeves is the device issue.
Yeah, it's probably not the devices and the issues that we're having in the city now, but it certainly doesn't help. I mean, the sense of alienation people feel. I mean, there are actually violent things that happen because of Facebook posts these days. I mean, it's a strange phenomenon that the whole social media thing that's meant to sort of connect us all is also serving to disconnect us and make us in a bad way.
The flames of just terrible behavior, basically.
It's an interesting point for me. Like when I started compiling music for the Calling All Saints record, I really wanted to make like a gut bucket blues record. And what that gut bucket to me means, it's not fluffy. There's no synths. There's not a lot of fluffy stuff. It's a really deep dig into what blues music should be and has been traditionally, and that's interesting for me because I always see like young kids and they're like really loving their hip hop and all that stuff, and I think that's awesome. But I always want to say I like the original black man's music. I like B.B. King, Muddy Waters, all the guys that sort of I grew up loving and all that.
I will say that this is our 10th album, people. I don't know, you probably never heard of us, but we've been playing music and writing and performing for many, many years. I'm not going to put a date on it, but blues has always spoken to me, and it's part of the soul of the country I grew up in, and Craig grew up on the south side of Chicago.
I never figured out as a little kid. I mean, I like hearing some type of music, and I couldn't figure out what was moving me about it, And I figured out eventually later on it was blues. But when I was a little kid, my parents would let me stay up late when B.B. King was going to be on like Johnny Carson. I was like loving that. I was like, wow, the dude is on Johnny Carson. I love that. But I didn't really know what it was that was really making me want to do music and play more guitar, but it turned out that it was like blues and all that, and I didn't know it at the time.
Well, I grew up with mostly country music in my household, and but country is blues, and most of the blues that I encountered spoke to me in a way that was, very, very memorable. Coco Taylor. I shared the stage with Coco a number of years ago, and man, I still, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe she welcomed me and brought me on. And
She really liked you too.
she did. She was nice.
Really into you.
She said, Jan James is out of sight. And I'm like, Coco Taylor just said that about me. I was pretty floored. Well, I started listening to Ida Cox when I was really getting into it, and Billie Holiday was she wasn't strictly blues, but she was a main influence on my music when I was starting out singing. And Muddy Waters was a big influence. I loved his music. I struggled through the whole label of being Janis Joplin for many years because I'm kind of white, and she was a great talent, but I always wanted to have my own voice, and so we've always written our own songs. And the thing that really popped into my brain, it was last winter? It was last winter when we were putting this album together, and it was cold. And I'd get up in the morning, and I loved getting up early and sitting with my coffee and my lyrics and my iPad. I started incorporating the iPad this year, and playing the music, and the songs just appeared. They just kind of come to me. And when Calling All Saints came, I'm like, too much trouble in the bad part of town. One bullet brings another child to the ground.
Now we're calling all saints to heal them in Chi-Town. Yeah, one man's faith.
And the shooting after shooting after shooting after fucking shooting. It's just too much. So when this song came out, I was like, this is the album. We're going to talk about compassion. A lot of times in blues, you gotta find something real. And I find oftentimes, and there's black performers and white performers that don't ever quite get to the reality of what the blues is about. And that's why a lot of people think they don't like the blues, because they're subjected to a bunch of people that go through the motions of the blues. The chords are very simple. The sentiments are very similar, and you can easily sing through a stanza of blues and get the notes right. But that ain't the blues. And I don't think it's about being black or white. I think it's about understanding what's real.
I'm not sure art should be in a win or lose kind of financial bracket like that, where you decide what good art is based on how well it sells and how well it succeeds and all that. But we live in this world, and that's the reality of it all, and we can't really fight beyond that. I mean, like, when I always think about blues, I always think to myself as like it's like this cool music, but I can understand on the one hand why like a younger, especially an African American audience, may not be as enticed to it or whatever, trying to figure out who the audience is for this music, because so many of the songs there's a lot of themes that are sort of like downtrodden kind of themes, and there's not a lot to be necessarily proud of and culturally happy with, right? And so I'd like to see that change. I like to see and we're trying to do that. We're writing blues songs and we're talking about stuff that's contemporary to today, not necessarily focused on this sort of like, I lost my dad, I lost my mama, I lost my...
You don't love me no more.
That old kind of thing,
Does everything have to go?
The biggest difference in blues today and yesterday is probably a technology kind of thing. And it means that the recording chops are so much better than it used to be. But there's also a thematic thread that's changed. I mean, I think like if you look at guys like Robert Cray or like some of the younger blues artists, they're not as apt to play into that sort of old 1920s thematic thing that Howlin' Wolf and a lot of those guys were about, right? And so that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to negotiate this old school. Well, I mean, like all blues players and like today, like how do we keep
it real?
Yeah, keep it alive and still move it forward.
You had plenty of money, 1922. You went around letting women make a fool out of you. Why don't you do right like some other men do? Go home, get out of here. Bring me some money too. I love my band, and the Rolling Stones love their band, and they have a big band, and I love having a big band. So that's one thing. I just do love it. It creates a party on stage, and that's what we're going to go for. I'm Jan James.
I'm Craig Calvert.
We are at the Heartland Cafe in Rogers Park, and you are watching Indigo Eye on Shy.